So before I start today, I just have a really quick question for everyone in the audience. Who here is on social media? Who has a profile on social media? Most hands are up. Okay. How many people have 2 profiles? 2? Okay. How many people know someone who is social media obsessed, has like 5 profiles? You know, they'll go on a date, they'll tweet about the date, Instagram what they're eating, and then like Facebook status is complicated, and now you're really confused about what's going on, right? Kind of ruins storytelling a little bit. And I've realized this in my life as well. When I was in college, a lot of people were really obsessed with the idea of social media. So the question becomes, why are we so obsessed with social media? And there were a lot of studies done on this throughout the 2000s, and one that I'd like to point out was done by 2 psychologists, Anita Wedding and David Williams. They did a study in 2013 to figure out what gratifications people really receive from social media. And what they found is that a lot of it is related to really important needs that we have in our everyday life, right? Information and resource-seeking utility. We're looking at social media for information. Social interaction. We want to figure out, who's in our community, who we can chat with. Surveillance. If you're going to a high school reunion, you want to figure out who's making the big bucks on LinkedIn, right? Self-validation, posting a Facebook status about anything that you've accomplished in life, or if you have a really strong opinion, you feel really good when people start liking it, when people start retweeting your tweets, like your Instagrams. And then the expression of self. Social media has given us a new way, a new platform almost, to become ambassadors of our own selves. I wish Gary was here because I would have said CEO for our own lives. Essentially giving us the ability to really express our opinions on a space where we're comfortable doing so. And what this reminded me of was a theory from the 1940s by a guy, Abraham Maslow, who created the hierarchy of needs, the hierarchy of social needs, where you have physiological needs, but then everything else, safety, the idea of love and belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization, all of this comes from social media, right? Pretty much the only thing it can't do is give us oxygen. But what it can do is, give us a safety net, help us find a job, help us find a community, help us get some self-esteem and self-actualization. And so essentially, more and more of us are using social media almost as a means of social survival, not even just as a means of entertainment anymore. And a lot of people have been disenchanted lately with social media. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people, recently at a baseball game, they're taking selfies, not even watching the game anymore, and is all over their Instagram. I'm sure you've seen people tweet like this, and you're just like, what? I don't know what to take away from that, like, congratulations. But there's also a lot of really interesting things that come out of social media. This, for example, someone had taken pictures of some guy who got his computer smashed in the middle of rural India, and the internet came together and bought him a new computer. Incredible, right? These 3 children, they were stuck at the New Delhi railway station. Someone tweeted about this, and the police ended up finding them and connecting them back with their parents. This lady in Berlin lost her passport. All she has to do is say 5 words, and the Secretary General of India was able to connect with her. And then I'm sure you've seen this very recently with the University of Missouri, right? There's a huge social movement there around race and racial injustice, and all of it was built through mobility with hashtags. How many of you have ever been hungry and done this? Anyone? So this is a new thing that Domino's came out with, where if you tweet a pizza emoji at Domino's, I was actually trying to do this today, it would have been a logistical nightmare for the production team, but if you tweet a pizza emoji at them, in 15 seconds, they'll respond back to you and give you back a pizza. And that's all you have to do nowadays. It honestly made me a lot lazier, but I'm not going to talk about that. Humans of New York. Has anyone heard of Humans of New York here? A few fans, right? This kid, incredible story, was talking about his professor, and the leader of Humans of New York made a crowdfunding campaign to give his school $1 million. So you guys are starting to get the premise a little bit of social media, right? And how about this? Less than 24 hours ago, there was a terrorist attack in Paris. And with this terrorist attack, you can see on the left side, there's a new hashtag that was developing. Porte ouverte means open door in French. And this hashtag was being used all through the country to find people who needed a safe haven. People were listing their addresses on social media, on Twitter, with this hashtag to connect people who needed help, right? Facebook has a new safety check feature where they're getting people who are in target areas of terrorism and extremism, and you're able to mark yourself safe. And these people are all my friends on Facebook who are in Paris at this very minute. And yesterday, while I was on Facebook, I got a notification that 4 of them had marked themselves safe. It made me feel incredible, and it also made me start thinking about how incredible Facebook is that we can do this in 2015, and you can figure out that your family and friends are in a safe location just by doing this, instead of calling them, figuring out how to determine their safety. So you heard a little bit about it, right? It's really incredible. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. So what's the big issue? Let's look at our last example, France. It is a country where the rate for Twitter adoption, the percentage of people in France who use Twitter, less than 8% of the entire country's population. And so you probably were sitting here thinking, wow, that open door hashtag, that's really incredible, it's connecting all these people. But then, what's the issue if all of these people, for some reason, are not on Twitter? Who's gonna see the hashtags? A majority of the people you saw on Twitter retweeting that were based in the United States. And so, they're getting the word out, but I'm sure the people who, were these refugees, people who needed a safe haven, may not have been on Twitter, may have never seen this hashtag. And so now we start talking a little bit about the issue of the digital divide, right? So there's the digital divide that has to do with internet access, where people don't have internet access and aren't able to get on these social platforms. And 10 or so years ago, internet access was a huge issue with the digital divide. Computers were expensive. The first Apple computer was $700 back in the 70s. Not a lot of people were able to afford that. And now you have this issue of access where, with the government and subsidization, everyone on Barack Obama's Connect Home program, they're able to bring internet and broadband to almost every major city in the United States. And so now you're looking at a situation where in 2015, almost every big city, almost every person who has social and financial barriers to internet is able to get on the internet. So now the issue becomes less about digital access and more about digital discomfort, right? Is you have the internet, you have all these tools at your disposal, but who's teaching you how to use them? And if you don't think digital discomfort is a real thing, teach your grandmother how to use Facebook. You'll be able to catch on to it pretty easily, right? It's the idea that 2/3 of this population that has the internet is not able to learn how to navigate the tools that they need to survive on the internet, to use it efficiently. And we found this in DC. I was really intrigued this summer by the idea of digital discomfort. And I had started a nonprofit project called Social Rise, which focuses on finding these people who work with nonprofits, face these really strong social and financial barriers to getting jobs, to starting small businesses. And I wanted to see what would happen if you put these same people on the tools that we use, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and taught them how to use it well, taught them who to connect with on these platforms. And the results were pretty incredible. So this is just a couple of our workshops. We did a workshop with Biteback in DC and with Street Sense in DC as well. And what we found is that the benefits are there for everybody, right? The benefits are there. If you tell someone who wants to be an entrepreneur that you can use Twitter and Facebook to market their business, they're going to believe you because it's frankly very easy to see. You can reach a lot of strangers, reach a lot of people outside of your direct network. And I'll tell a brief story really quickly. That's My America on the left. She's giving her pitch for her company that has to do with storytelling. And she escaped a civil war in her country. She did not have a lot of technology. All of her books were written in journals. She's a pretty famous author back in her country. But here, she was having trouble adjusting to what print media had become. And what we taught My America was how she can use Twitter to tweet about her poems, how she can create a blog on WordPress to access more people through online media, right, and digital branding. Levester, he was a formerly homeless individual who now works with Street Sense as a vendor, and he's a creator. He likes to create movies. He likes to create art, plays. And Levester is someone who latched onto Twitter very easily because he understood that Twitter was something that could help him market his movies, that could increase his potential as a creative entrepreneur. And then you have all of these individuals who work with Empowered Women's International, a nonprofit that helps women become better entrepreneurs. A lot of them are immigrants and refugees, similar to My America. And they are starting to realize the potential of social media, that they can go on Twitter, that they can create Facebook pages for their businesses. And I will say this right now, I'm not an expert in a lot of this, right? I probably, I know how to use Twitter, I know how to use Facebook, but most of you raised your hands at the very beginning when I asked the very same question for how many of you were on social media. So what I do with them is something that you all can do every single day, finding people in your communities that are facing these barriers and teaching them how to simply just get on Twitter and accommodate to this environment. And one story I'm going to tell is with this individual I met, Jimmy, who is starting a new app. And this app is really interesting. What he wants to do is create a TurboTax for food stamps. The food stamp application at the moment, it's 27 pages, and there's a lot of different sections to fill out. And the line at the TurboTax office is similar to the DMV, right? If anyone's ever been to the DMV, I don't even need to explain that analogy. But it is a very long and frustrating line. But what he wants to do is reduce this process to less than 5 minutes, where they can go on an application and they can type in a couple details about how much income they're making, their background, and they're able to find out their eligibility and collect the food stamps that they're owed from the government. And I was at an event where he was pitching this. I was immediately intrigued, and I saw someone next to me saying, oh, those people don't use smartphones. It was like a very kind of like, it was an offhanded comment, but it was very interesting to me. I was like, hey, what Marim said earlier about the idea of the enemy of knowledge not being ignorance, being outdated beliefs. Yes, that's true. Maybe 10 years ago, a lot of them didn't use smartphones. But we have the power to not only give people smartphones in 2015, but increase the adoption of technology applications on these smartphones. And I think Jimmy is someone who is an entrepreneur who understood that. He understood that there obviously were limitations, but what he pursued was the idea of potential over limitation. He understood that if people were able to get on this application, they're able to go through this process and get their food stamps in under less than 5 minutes, this would be an incredible feat for them. And he didn't want to stop at the notion that maybe there's over 50% of a household that makes under $30,000 that doesn't have smartphone technology. Today there is. But in 5 years, who knows what is going to happen? And I think that is the idea that I really want you all to take away today, is that the idea of today is not so much about social media and how important social media is to us. It's the idea of pursuing potential over limitation. How every time you teach someone something new, every time you teach even a friend who's not on Twitter, who's not on LinkedIn, if you try to convince them to go to these platforms, there's going to be resistance. But at the end of the day, if you see that there is potential for them, if you see that this addresses their challenges, why even look at the resistance as a sign of giving up and stopping? This is something that really focuses on looking into the future and jumping over your own assumptions of what people can and cannot do. And so now I just want you to reflect back to the very first question I asked you about social media. How many people have had a petition online signed or a charity fundraiser, anything like that, where someone in your network, whether it's online or offline, had helped you out? Whether you'd posted a Facebook status about buying a ticket to TEDx and someone had jumped on it and bought a ticket to TEDx. Whether you're running a marathon, you wanted someone to donate there. This is the idea that communities really help build up our worth and really help build up our potential. And for people who don't have these same communities, this is a possibility for them now. It's no longer a lofty reality that you can throw someone onto social media. This is something that people are starting to understand and see as a really important utility in their life. So just think about the voice that social media gives you. Think about the community that it gives you, the knowledge. I know a lot of people last night came online and said, hey, I've been offline all day, just found out about the Paris attacks. Why is that? Because most of the information that was being shared about the news, that was being shared about these attacks, was available mostly through online sources. If you were offline for a while, it essentially precludes you from having this same sort of knowledge. And tomorrow's entrepreneurs, tomorrow's business leaders, tomorrow's refugees, tomorrow's saviors, tomorrow's new students, tomorrow's PhD students, they could all be disconnected at this very minute. And all they might need from you is a hand and saying, hey, this is something that could really help you out. And you could see in this next generation people who are creating social movements, people who are saving lives, all because someone gave them a chance. And it's not going to be convenient at all times. It's not going to be easy at all times, but it'll be right. And that's the whole process of transcending limitations for social media. Thank you.